Well, in case you didn't guess by the front page of the news of the service sheet, the season of Easter continues. We are in the sixth season of Easter, sixth Sunday of Easter, a season of what we might call resurrection-proving encounters and image generation to assure us, to perhaps ensure us that Jesus continues. 2 weeks ago, we had the image of the shepherd, and last week of the vine. They are the sort of images that are bound into the fabric of life, of the world, of those who followed Jesus, as if to say, Jesus continues in the ordinary things of life. However, in our world, we are, for the most part, distanced from such images. Perhaps if we were stock farmers or viticulturists, it would be different. Assuming that we still think God encounter in the ordinariness of life is a possibility, what might that look like for us today? A week or 3, which probably means 6 weeks ago, I was out by the compost hub. I was chatting to Kevin and Gregory as they were processing the compost. As is not uncommon, a chap wandered up. He was wearing a high-vis vest and engaged me in conversation. All this land here, he said, pointing in the land that runs from the compost hub up to the car park, he said, all this land, it should be producing food. It should be growing food to feed people. It's a waste having it just like this. I pointed out that there was food being grown on the Wellesley Street side of the site. But there is so much more that could be grown. I can see cabbages and broccoli, those sorts of vegetables. Land should be used to feed people, not just sit like this. Well, in theory, I agreed, but I was a little perplexed as to how it would happen and whether the site was actually suitable. He was an older guy. My guess is he may have been Māori, so I wondered that perhaps he knew more than I did about the conditions needed to grow crops. As the conversation continued, he told me each Wednesday he came up to Federal Street to buy a bag of vegetables from the pop-up space as part of the mission. He said, each Wednesday evening we have a dinner at the Ellen Melville Centre. You should come and join us. I come each week, I buy a bag of vegetables to give to the people who make the kai. It's important to make sure that everyone gets a good feed, and it's something I can do to help. Chatted on for a while. He then said to me, you should come and visit me at my place sometime. Okay, I responded, somewhat hesitantly. Where is your place? Oh, I'm down on Queen Street. My place is between Derby Street and Victoria Street, one of the doorways there. You're welcome any time. It wasn't quite what I expected. Generosity, hospitality, care for the people who didn't have enough, him taking his place, his part in caring, looking for ways to change the way things are with the resources that he had and that he sees around him. By no means to idealize him, but in a curious way, he was a revelation, a Christ present moment in an unexpected way. Today's gospel is all about love, living on in Jesus' love, to love one another as Jesus has loved us, of being chosen and not choosing, chosen to make this love real, to bear fruit that will endure. And yes, Richard, it includes that quote that proliferates on Anzac memorials. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. The command that Jesus gives, that leaves us with at the end of today's passage, is that we are to love one another. How many of us know what that means? Some years ago, when I was preaching about Jesus, as I recall, probably about my discombobulation when people spoke with great certainty of knowing Jesus and encountering Jesus, I proposed that when we name Jesus, there was a Jesus present for every person in the room. For every one of us has our own version, and there's the possibility that quite a few, nothing will spring to mind. We speak in the singular, we hear in the singular, and each of us brings our singular to the collective. I'm not sure we talk much about the specifics of it with one another. I think we gloss over. We're all in this place. We identify with the Christian lineage, so we must be on the same sort of page, maybe kind of enough to not probe and get along. So when I spoke about Jesus in that way, I wonder if it's the same with the love one another command. If we can get anywhere near defining love, scraping off the overlay of romanticism that is attached itself like a barnacle, what are we left with? It is likely that in each of us some response will arise. It may be very difficult to pin it down with words. However that is, it will be shaped, and we will know it through and by and from our own experience, from our life thus far. Inevitably, we apply the understanding from our experience to the command to love one another. We seek to apply this loving one another as best we can, given who we are, place, time, and context. And definitely some days are better than others. Because we are human, we are enculturated. We bring with us, even to loving, expectations and judgments of what love looks like when it's being done, of how things will play out for the good, and quite likely how much the one we're loving should thank us for being such a loving person, and of how the behaviour of the one loved will come to fit within the norms of the encultured paradigm we subconsciously apply to the situation. I suspect the love in the love one another command has an implicit unconditionality clause to it. This may seem impossible. And I think if we think we can do it ourselves from our conditioned thinking and habits, it will be pretty impossible. I suggest to unlearn our colonizing ways, we need to learn from those who are unlike us, from those we feel the call to love, those we perceive to need our love and the share of our abundance. There's another person I have come to know over time, beautiful and broken, caring and dangerously unpredictable. I'm never quite sure which one I'll meet. They sat with me a while ago on Federal Street again. They had been housed after long-term street living. They had some training and they had gained employment. So from a certain way of the proper way to do things when you're loved, life was on track and as it should be. But gradually the lustre had faded. Somewhere between their inner identity and previous life, the experience of being housed became unbearable for them. Now they had returned to living under a bridge. And despite being told exactly where that is, I still don't know where that bridge is. There's a part of Auckland cityscape I still am to learn. Employment had also ceased. Weeping. Their perception was that being employed, even in a role that advocated for people who lived on the margins, had distanced them from the real. They had stopped seeing how it was for their people who society had discarded. They had ceased to see what was really going on. Again, not to idealise, but the tears and the grief and the pain were real, as was the question asked, demanded through angry snot and tears, with a thumb pointing to this church. What are you doing? Comfortable inside your walls, you're just part of the system. Where is your voice while all this is happening around you? Where is the God you talk about who cares? My response, my only response, was silence. I was struck by the truth of what was said. We sat together as tears flowed. After a time we embraced and we parted. I think still in relationship. Somewhat in disarray with my head turned, as you may guess, I'm still processing. The command is to love, and the gift given us is to know we're chosen and are now friends. One of the things about being chosen and being called friend is we're now called with knowing to go and bear fruit that will endure. A story quite famous within social justice circles goes something like this. As slaves, we may be okay attending to the resulting needs, but as friends, we're called to be more curious, to look at the causes of such need. We're to be agents of transformation in the world. The incredible graciousness, empowerment, and compassion that came into our world in Jesus is still, at least potentially so, in our world, in us, a collective who gather in Jesus' name. What Jesus did, we can do too. In fact, that is precisely what we are asked to do.